Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we're going to talk about things that are going on in the precious metals market, industrials metals market. That's, by the way, more challenging to say than you might think, and stocks of companies that revolve around the industries that we work with. So welcome aboard, everybody. For all my American viewers, happy 4th of July. Yeah, we're a couple days early, but it's the July 4th weekend. The fireworks are going crazy all the time around here. It'll be going on for a few days now. So welcome. And for my Canadian friends, I hope you had a great Canada Day. It is awesome to be with everyone today. I'm looking forward to having a lot of fun and talking about some very cool stuff today. So welcome to Trahani. Tranhani, I think that's how that would be pronounced, Tranhani. First time I believe I've seen you here. Welcome. And you have asked if we can do a video, or have I done a video on power plugs? And I don't think I have. Yeah, no, I don't think I have. So yeah, I'll put that in the queue, and we'll see if we can get something put together. So Scrapping Irish, JR Cat, E-Waste Mike, see you scrapping. Welcome everybody. Great to have you all here. I always like the way Mike comes into these things and says hi to everybody. I tell you, with friends like Mike, who would ever need an enemy out there, huh? All right. Jose, welcome. Great to have you here. Oh, okay. All right. I got you. Coming in on your wife's account. Gotcha. Very cool. All right. Well, it is great to have everybody here. Man, I tell you what, we are having one hot weekend here. Holy cow. We've had heat advisories up. The heat index is, over 100. The temperature is in the mid 90s. The heat index goes over 100. It's just such a wonderful time. But hey, that's Florida for you. What are you going to do, right? All right. Well, what we're going to do, though, is we are going to dive right in and get to it. So we're starting out with gold today. So let's get over here and talk about gold. I like to use the APMEX charts here. I have used APMEX for buying and selling physical gold. I don't ever recommend, hey, Copper Buck, great to have you here. I do not ever recommend buying paper gold. Certificates and things like that. It's just way too easy to get ripped off. But physical gold and silver, those are investments that you can hold. And if they fit into what you're trying to do, they make good sense. And APMEX is one of the good places that you can go to buy your physical gold and silver. All right, so we're going to dive right in with gold. And, on the thumbnail, I said, gold going up, or it's like the question mark, is gold going up? Well, if we look at the 24-hour, when it decides to wake up and go to the 24-hour. All right, here we are. If we look at the 24-hour, we can see that we have a nice little increase in gold here. It's up 0.5%. So that's interesting, because you're talking about weekend trading going on. So we're starting to see, even over the weekend, there's a little bit of an upward trend. If we go over to the 3-day window, we see that we had this rise that went on, and now we're kind of flattening out here for a little bit, but we're above the previous plateau. So where it was, 1920 plus, we're now up in the 1930 plus. So that's a nice rise, a little bit stable. It's kind of, we want it to hold and keep going up if possible. Let's go see what happened for the week. Well, for the week we're down, but we're not down a whole lot. 0.23% is nothing to get terribly worried about. But you can see got to click on this one here. But you can see that we did have this downward trend going on here. But there wasn't it's not like we were all over the place, right? We had a relatively flat plateau here, and then we had some variation going on in here, but again, somewhat stable in there. And this is what we're seeing here, and why I'm thinking that we're starting to see a little bit, we might see a little rebound in the gold here. So that's real nice. Then we go over and we look at the 1 month. 1 month is down 1.67%, but you know, when gold was pushing 2,000, it's not at all beyond the beyond the expectation that it would be down a bit more. So not terribly concerned about the fact that it's down right now, because we see that it's starting to pick back up again. So that's nice. On the 3 month, yeah, we're down. We're down for the quarter. And then year to date, come on, there we go. Year to date, so remember we had this nice pickup in here, and we've kind of trailing off a little bit. So, but again, it busted through that 2,000 ceiling, and it had to correct. So it's in that correction. So I would expect, some relative stability in gold with a little bit of increasing possibly going on here. Of course, if we look at the 5-year, we can see that gold remains a good long-term investment. You just have to be willing to ride out the downtrends. You see here this downtrend, but overall, gold is a good long-term investment, if you want to preserve your wealth. And that's what most people buy physical gold for, is a preservation of wealth. But the important thing to remember when you buy physical gold is that you're going to have to sell it at some point if you want to get your value out of it. Now, there are people that buy gold because they think that at some point in the future, fiat currency, like most national currencies are all fiat currencies, at some point they'll become worthless or just so inflated that they're not worth anything, in which case having physical silver and gold will have value. My position on that is that if fiat currencies get that bad, we got really big problems in the world, really, really big problems. And, having that gold and silver to buy stuff, yeah, okay, but we're going to have some really serious problems in the world at that point. Having said that, though, I do firmly believe in buying and holding silver and gold, physical silver and gold, for wealth preservation, because as we've seen over the long term, silver and gold can hold their value and provide you that assurance. When you're buying silver and gold, you want to think about the premium that you're paying. So that's the amount that's over spot. Hey, Anfield, great to see you here. Doggy Bones, great to have you here. Scrapping on the Fly, welcome. Great to see you here. So when you buy your physical silver and gold, you definitely want to keep in mind the premium that you're paying on that product. So what do I mean by the premium? Those of you that have bought silver and gold, you understand this. There's the spot price, which is what we're looking at here. And then when you buy that 1 ounce or that 10 ounce or whatever bar or round of gold or silver, whoever sells it to you is going to add a percentage on top of that. That is the way they make their money. They do that to compensate for their fees with storing and processing and such things as that. So there's a premium. Now, if you buy Silver Eagles, Britannias, that government type mint coin, you're going to be paying a higher premium than if you are just buying a respected mint round or bar. So I like the Sunshine Mint products. They have a real nice seal on them that helps you to make sure it's not counterfeit. The premiums are usually not that bad, and they're always going to be lower than if I buy Silver Eagles. So the premium is something you want to think about, because when you then turn around and sell that silver or gold, you need to get enough money to cover whatever premium you paid and then still make money on top of that. So you always want to pay attention to the premium that you're paying when you buy these things. Now, some people just like to collect the silver and gold coins that have an intrinsic beauty to them. So there are people that like to buy the pandas. There's people that like to buy the lunas. For a long time, I was buying the the shark series that the Perth Mint was putting out. Why? Well, because I like sharks. Come on, you all know the answer to that one. So you really want to pay attention to those premiums, and it's okay to pay those premiums as long as you understand why you're paying that premium. So just pay attention to that and have fun with what you're getting. Now, Loafer Sheffield says he got 2 1/4-ounce Britannias delivered yesterday. Gold and silver have been a hedge against fiat currency for hundreds of years, or you can invest in stocks. Well, and it's not so much the question of Bud Light, it's, your stocks in general, right? So, and if you do your research appropriately and you do the kind of stuff that I do when I research a company, stocks can also be a very good, viable place to put your money. So stocks have a different place in your portfolio than silver and gold, and you need to understand why you're investing in any of them. All right, so questions about gold or silver. Now, because I like to be transparent, I have not bought any gold or silver recently. I have been putting most of my available resources into the Shark Scrapper Company. So I just haven't been doing a lot of buying, and I haven't sold any recently either. So now this is a really good point that I want to talk about too while we're on the subject. When it comes to melting it yourself, the challenge that you can run into is, you melt it yourself and you're not paying a premium, but then you have to be able to prove to somebody that what you're selling them is in fact a high quality gold or silver. So if you have good contacts with jewelers or other people that buy silver and gold, you can work out some reasonable accommodations and be able to sell to make some money probably. The real rub that you come into is, unless you are a very experienced refiner and have invested in the necessary equipment and know-how, you're not going to be making 999 quality pure gold or silver. You will make reasonably good gold or silver if you're at all good at it. And then it's just a question of what a jeweler or somebody else is going to pay you. So you gotta, like anything that we do in this business, you have to understand how you're going to sell it once you have it. So just having some gold nuggets that you melted down, gold buttons, whatever you want to call them, isn't necessarily valuable until you have figured out how you're going to sell those things. Now, some people have done really well making copper bars and aluminum bars with their YouTube logos, and people buy them as much for the collector value as they do for the physical metal that they have in them. So I'm not saying that you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is understand how you're going to sell it so that you know what your potential return is going to be. Let's see. We also had this question come up. Are you going to mention numismatics and rare coins? No, I am not. I am not going to mention that because I don't do that. There are people that know what the value are of these, of numismatics, of rare coins, of odd vintages, those kind of things. I was just talking with E-Waste Mike about this yesterday, and the reality is that unless you really understand numismatics, you can get taken to the cleaners. So you got to be really careful when you go down that road. Now there's different levels of understanding numismatics, right? For instance, most people know that pennies up to 1982, copper. In 1982, some were copper, some were alloyed, and after 1982, they're all alloyed. So, how much? So if you're collecting pennies for copper, Well, it's relatively simple. Anything that is 82 or younger, and then if you understand which of the 82s to separate, you're great, right? If you're collecting pennies for valuable numismatic kind of coin collector things, well, now you got to do your research into the coin, and you got to know how to grade the coin and that sort of stuff. So it takes a lot to get into that, to do it right, and it's just not something that I'm spending my time looking at. So I'm not saying don't do that. It's fun. There's a lot of people that really enjoy that hobby. I'm just not one of them. It's not something that I do. And we've premiums are very high, and getting a genuine dealer in the know is very difficult. Yeah, so if I think you're referring to the numismatics, so that is a really good point there. And one of the nice things about just buying silver and gold as bars or rounds from a reputable mint is that you can shop the premiums then between sellers. So you can compare APMEX and JM Bullion and Kitco, and you can say, oh, well, these guys have the lowest premium this week, because their premium is going to change too as they compete with each other to get business. So that's a very good point. And Doggy Bones, we're not talking silver today. We alternate as we go through. So either next week or the week after, we'll be hitting up silver. All right. Hey, some good questions, good feedback there. So it's really good to talk through all of this stuff, and yeah, that's what we're here to do. So really cool. All right. Well, let us move on now to the next section, and this is safety. So the topic I want to talk about for safety today is vehicle safety. And there's a lot of aspects to vehicle safety that you really need to kind of pay attention to. You need to think it through a little bit. So let's just talk about some of the basics, right? I think everybody knows certain things like, put your seatbelts on. It's funny, E-Waste Ben a couple years ago actually got pulled over by the traffic police because he didn't have a seatbelt on, and he recorded through the whole thing, which I thought was hilarious, that the police there were so relaxed and chilled about everything that they didn't mind the fact that he was recording through that. But pretty much every developed country out there in the world has got seatbelt laws, so you want to make sure you're wearing your seatbelts, and it's just the right thing to do anyway, right? It'll keep you safe and limit any injuries that you might have if you get in an accident. I know it's a pain in the butt if you're street scrapping. Trust me, I know, right? Because I do street scrapping, and it's in and out of the truck constantly taking the seatbelt on and off. And over time, like with the Sharkmobile right now, I have to give the seatbelt a little bit of a tug and help the retractor. So I'm going to have to get the retractor worked on eventually. So I understand that that you can get a little frustrated with that, but it's really important that you wear your seatbelts. The other thing that I would encourage everybody to do is slow down a little bit. I've seen some videos with people racing through neighborhoods to get to the scrap, and I get it. It's like it can be competitive, and in some locales, it can be really competitive. But if you're racing around like that, well, first of all, you're probably going to miss some scrap, and second of all, you really have the risk of running into a pedestrian, an animal, a vehicle that's parked on the side of the road. If you're throwing stuff in the back of your truck and you don't have it secured properly, you might spill your load. So just slow down a little bit and be a little bit safer when you're out there doing your street scrapping. And then in general, when you're out driving, relax a little bit. I don't know what it's like where you live, but I tell you what, around here in Jacksonville, people are insane. The driving is just freaking nuts. Now, first of all, we have a lot of road construction everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Buck Strickland mentioned to me one time, he said that the Florida state sign should be road construction ahead, which Just freaking hilarious, because it's absolutely right. It's like everywhere you turn around here, there's road construction going on. So that means that the lanes are shifting and changing, and you got cranes and people around you, and people are still driving like idiots. They're driving real fast. They're trying to pass each other. They're trying to squeeze in at the last minute. And it's just, I mean, I see some of these people that cut off semi trucks that, you know, are loaded, and they're cutting right in front of that semi truck. It's like, what, you just got a death wish? You know, it's like, I can't imagine what it must be like to be a truck driver of a large big rig or a dump truck or any of these big heavy vehicles, and then idiots pull in front of you at the last minute or do the stupid stuff that I see happening. The other thing with with vehicle safety, of course, is just maintaining your car. If you regularly do your oil changes, your coolant, check your brakes, those kind of things, that goes a long way to your vehicle safety, because your vehicle won't overheat. It'll keep functioning properly. I always am very careful with my brakes. I tell my mechanic, you know, when I bring the truck in, it's like, check the brakes, because the last thing I want to worry about is 1,000 pounds of computers in the back of the truck and the brakes not functioning properly. So I always worry about those things. So yeah, wannabe scrapper says it sucks. I believe you're referring to being a commercial truck driver and having people pull in front of you. Yeah, that would be, I can just imagine. And of course, Scrapping on the Fly says he's cutting donuts through the parking lots. That's hilarious. That's a hilarious story. I got to share this with y'all. My wife tells a story of her brothers they were a little bit on the wild side growing up, and well, that's what brothers are supposed to do, right? So anyway, they were living down in Daytona area, and one evening the police show up with one of her brothers, and her mom answers the door, and the police officer says, ma'am, your son was doing donuts on the beach. Well, her mom thought that meant he was doing drugs on the beach. And so she just goes nuts. She's like, oh my God, my son's doing donuts. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. My wife said she was back there laughing her butt off, because she was just rolling. And then at that point, the police officer figured out the confusion, and the police officer starts laughing. And so her brother got away with it, not getting a ticket, because of the way their mother reacted to him doing donuts. Hey, Copperbuck, thank you, man. That is awesome, dude. I appreciate the super. Yep, we had a semi run into our lane closure on 95 last week. Took out your F7. Oh my gosh, man, not cool, man. Yeah, I hope nobody got hurt. Because that's a lot of mass running into something. So hopefully nobody got hurt there. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it greatly. So, yeah, where were we? I got sidetracked on donuts. yeah, donuts are a gateway drug to cake. Yeah, yep. Oh, that explains so much. Yeah, I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. My wife won't let me chase women, so I've only got ice cream and donuts as my bad habits, and I really ought to get rid of a couple of those too. All right. Hey, speaking of donuts, I don't know if any of you have ever gone to this place, Duck Donuts. Holy cow, man, those are really cool. If you've never been to one, don't go there, because they're addictive. They make them fresh right there at the place, right? You go in, it's like ordering your hamburger, but it's a donut, and you get, you can tell them what toppings you want and all that kind of stuff. Oh man, those were so good. So good. Hey, thank you, Doggy Bones, for the super sticker. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. Super, man. This is awesome. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. All right. So, and wannabe scrappers asking Buck, did it have an attenuator? Is that the shock absorbers that you're talking about to try to take up some of that energy? So hopefully, and yeah, hopefully nobody got hurt in all that. All right. So, man, I got really distracted. So sorry about that. Between donuts and donuts. It is time to move on to copper. That is our industrial metal discussion for the day. Copper here. We can see that copper it dipped down, but it was on an upward trend here. If we look here at the 24-hour copper, we went from kind of a plateau, but then it started climbing here a little bit. And then all of a sudden it had this little drop. Yeah. Again, these are 24-hour weekend numbers. I don't get too too terribly wrapped up with these shorter term, but it's good to see that what that looks like. Now, if we look at the 30-day, we can see that we had this nice climb, and then we kind of fell again here, and then it starts back up. So we've got a little bit of fluctuation going as copper tries to get going again. Just frustrating that copper hasn't been climbing better. When we look at the 60-day, now this is kind of interesting here. We look at these peaks. So we go from peak to peak, we have an upward trend. And if you look from trough to trough, we have an even better upward trend. So if you look at the 60-day spot, you see that the prices are moving in the right direction, at least as far as we're concerned, they're moving in the right direction, headed up. So that was the 60-day. And if we look at the 6 month, go there. In the 6 month, well, let's not use such a big. If we look at the 6 month peak to peak, yeah, that's not good, right? Because that's kind of going in the wrong direction. Trough's going down still. So yeah, the 6 month is not looking the way we want it to look. We would like to see more of a sustained upward movement in these peaks and troughs. And the reason why we need that sustained upward movement is because the scrap yards aren't going to do a lot of upward adjustments in pricing unless they have some reasonable assurance that the prices are rising with stability. So if we compare the 6 month and the 60-day, we just don't see a lot of reason for scrap yards to start raising prices just yet. So, and however, if we look at the 1 year, we can see that the troughs are all, trough to trough movement is up, but the overall is kind of, the peaks were headed up. Now the peaks are headed down. So we got a lot of mixed numbers going on in pricing here right now for copper. The bottom line for us is I wouldn't expect a whole lot of changes going on in the copper prices at your yards. You're going to see a little bit of up, a little bit of down, probably as they try to play these games right now. But there isn't a good solid trend here for the yards to pick up on to make some decisions on what they're going to do for pricing. So wouldn't expect to see a whole lot. But let's take a look at what's going on with the inventory, because the inventories tell a very important story. Here we see the 30-day COMEX warehouse stock levels are going up. As the inventory stock levels go up, well, the prices go down. That's unfortunate, right? 60-day, we had nothing much, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they just started pouring a lot of copper into the warehouses or something, taking a lot of deliveries. Must have been because that's almost a hyperbolic rise in inventory levels. However, if we look at the 30-day London Metal Exchange, now this was 60-day COMEX. If we look at the 30-day London Metal Exchange warehouse levels, we can see that they were, there we go, that they were a little bit stable. Then we had, look at this gyration going on here, and now they've been dropping again. So that's what we love to see. We love to see inventory levels dropping, because as the inventory levels drop, the prices are probably going to come back up. And I really like watching the London Metal Exchange warehouse stock levels, because those that's that long-term story that we want the yards paying attention to. And we see that the levels are dropping. And we go to the 6 month, and we see this 6 month. Come on, Sharky, get your fingers right. We see that 6 month right at the tail end of the 6 month. We see it dropping off, not as low as it had been, but still a downward trend going on there. And the 1 year inventory levels, if we look at the peak during the 1 year, that's a downward. If we look at these troughs, they're tending downward. So we long-term copper inventories going down, and that should cause copper scrap prices to eventually start coming back up. And then if you look at the 5 year, this is such a good story for us as scrappers. Look at all these peaks going down. If you go to the current peaks, the downward trend is even more. If you look at what used to be a floor that they didn't want to go below for inventory, they busted through that. So now they're below that lower level that they had been at for quite a while. So all of this speaks to copper eventually turning around. Now, what does it mean for us? Well, what it means for us, if I can find the right button. So what does that mean for us as scrappers? Well, I recommend that you try to hang on to some of your copper if you can. There's a lot of folks that need to sell their copper because they need the cash flow. You got to do what you got to do, right? So if you do have to sell copper for cash flow, if you can, just sell the lower value type copper. So your insulated copper wire is a good thing to sell for your cash flow, and then hang on to your number one copper if you can. Hang on to your bare bright if you can. Number two copper, that's that's kind of like a valve for you. If you really need the cash flow, sell your number two copper. If you don't need the cash flow right away, hang on to your number two copper, anticipating that these prices are going to rebound in the course of the next year. So I am hanging on to a lot of my copper. I sell my insulated copper wire on a regular basis in order to meet my cash flow. And I'm saving up my number two and my number one and my bare bright in anticipation of future value in the copper market. I have the luxury to do that because I can move enough other stuff like the e-waste that I get and the scrap aluminum and shred steel to meet my cash flow requirements. If you can do that, then that's a good thing to do. That's my recommendation on how you should approach copper right now. And hopefully you've all got some really good ideas of what you want to do with your copper. And I would say build yourself a plan. Make sure that you have a plan for what you want to do, because it's really easy to get caught up in the short-term fluctuations and then make some poor decisions or decisions that didn't get you as much. If you have a plan and you know why you're doing it, then it's easier to stick to that plan. And it certainly looks like Junkerman S has a plan, because he's been hanging on to his copper for 10 years. Holy bajoli. Man, that's a long time to hang on to copper. I say that, but I've held on to, I still have copper and silver and gold that I bought over 10 years ago. So, it makes sense. And Scrapping Irish wants to know how much copper, how much copper do you have there, Junker Man? Because yeah, 10 years, that is a long time to be grabbing and hanging on to copper. And the reason why copper is a little bit better as an industrial metal to hang on to is because we know it's going to be in high demand moving forward. You can get some pretty decent weight without necessarily having to use a lot of space because it's a pretty dense metal. So yeah, you can accumulate some pretty reasonable value in a relatively small amount of space. So definitely something to think about. So Doggy Bones, Simple Man, please hold your head. Don't forget what the junkyard said. Okay, I'm missing something there. Not quite sure what's going on there. Oh, Andrew Powell, welcome. Welcome in from New Zealand, sir. Great to have you here. And then let's see. Scrapping on the Fly has been saving his for 2 years. He's got about 1,400 pounds. Holy bajoli. Junkerman says he has a few thousand pounds. Man, oh man, there's some weight there, guys. That is some serious weight. Now, something that you may want to think about when you have that much copper is your yard going to be able to buy that kind of volume from you when you're ready to sell? And you may not want to, you may not load it all up in one load and take it in like that. But that's something to think about too, is when it is time to sell, are you going to be able to find a buyer that will be able to handle the volume that you have? I imagine most of the reasonable sized scrap yards can handle those kind of loads. That shouldn't be that big a deal. It's just keep that one in mind and make sure that the yard that you would sell it to is capable of handling that, and how they would pay you out and those kind of things. So, but man, that is great. Those are some nice loads there. And of course, Scrapping on the Fly says, hey, if they can't buy it, they won't get it. Well, of course, good point. The only issue that I was trying to make was, if you want to get the money for it, you got to have somebody you're going to sell it to, right? That's going to be like one of my mantras. One of my mantras, right, is, because I say this all the time during my videos, my e-waste videos. It's like, don't depopulate a board unless you know how you're going to sell what you're taking off. So it's like one of my mantras is know how you're going to sell it. Don't just pick up junk thinking there's value there if you don't know how you're going to sell it. Don't depopulate a board unless you know how you're going to sell it and what you're going to get for it. There are some things that you might do as an educated guess from experience, but you really want to make sure that you have some good idea of what you're going to do with stuff. Junkman, thank you. I enjoy making them. I love sharing this information with everybody, so I appreciate the compliment. Thank you, sir. All right. So speaking of knowing how you're going to sell stuff, that takes us to our business note. And I got to thinking about this one as I was preparing for this week's video. And there were just a few things that went on that caused me to say, I think the subject for our business note today should be karma. Karma. There's a couple ways to do, well, there's an infinite number of ways to do business out there, but there's a couple of basic ways to go about doing your business, right? One of them is above board, ethical in every possible way. And another one is just trying to make as much money as you can, and not worried about your customers, not worried about the long-term implications of what you're doing. So you've got these two extremes of how to go about doing business. Now, I believe that the best long-term strategy is being ethical, above board, honest, as transparent as you can be, within reason, of course, because there are people that will take advantage of you if you're overly transparent. But being an ethical business person can make all the difference in the world. If you have to change prices on people and you've been ethical with them all along, then they're may not like the fact that you had to lower your prices when you buy something, but they know that you did it for the right reasons, that you either had no choice or it was the right kind of business decision. You've probably warned them ahead of time, and that will, they'll still do business with you. They'll still sell with you. Or they may say, okay, well, I'm not going to sell, but I'll wait for the prices to come up. So those are, that's important stuff to, your customer relationship is really important there. My clients trust me to pick up a load of stuff, take it back to my shop, weigh it, and tell them what things weigh. I always invite them to come to the shop to observe the weigh-in if they can, if they want to. But many of my clients, they trust me, and they know that I'm going to give them a true weight. I've offered to record it for them if they want to see it and those kind of things. So that level of honesty in the relationship with your clients will go a long, long way to your success, as opposed to ripping people off. And then they figure out that you're ripping them off, and then they don't do business with you anymore. And you can only rip people off so long before not only they won't do business with you, but they will tell people that you're shady, that you're scamming them, that you're stealing from them, and then they won't do business with you anymore either. So that kind of that level of relationship with your clients, and it goes both ways. The people you sell to, the people you're buying from, is very, very important. I've seen videos where people have talked about, hiding bricks and concrete blocks and bowling balls inside of refrigerators and appliances and such, trying to scam some more weight. Eventually, the scrapyards figure out you're doing that. When a scrapyard figures out you're doing that, then they either won't let you go there anymore. They'll blacklist you. They won't pay you as much. There are ways that the scrapyard will get back at you, and they have long memories. So it's not only are you stealing from them, but you're hurting yourself in the long run, because you're either not going to get the best prices, or it's just going to be really hard to sell overall. So you don't want to be playing those kind of games either. That's just wrong on too many levels. So that's your relationship with the people you deal with directly. Now there's also the karma of, and there was a comment up here just a minute ago. Wannabe said, not worrying about environmental legislation. That I'm going to take that to kind of a next level here, and that is, if you are doing your best to follow the laws, the rules and regulations of your country, your state, your county, your city, the people that, where you're located, then you can sleep much better at night. You don't have to worry about that knock at the door or somebody showing up at the shop and you getting in a lot of trouble and having to pay hefty fines, or you're getting shut down because you've been violating environmental standards, water standards, air pollution standards, you name it, the list goes on. There are a couple of businesses in the industrial park where the shark cage is located who have been shut down because for a long time they just, they didn't care. They weren't paying attention to stuff, either on purpose or out of ignorance. I kind of think it was mostly on purpose. They were doing things in violation of some of the local standards and ordinances, and it catches up with them, and then they get shut down. Now, how much money are you going to make when you're shut down? Now, a lot of people say, well, that's all right. I'll just dissolve that company, open up a new company, and it'll take them a while to catch up with me again. It's like, yeah, all right. But you know what? Eventually that kind of stuff is going to catch up with you. And if it catches up with you in a bad way, well, you could be wearing orange as the new black. So you just don't want to go down that road. The same is true when it comes to your taxes, whether it's collecting and paying the sales tax for your locality, paying your income tax with the IRS. Those kind of things can come back and bite you in the butt really, really hard if you're not being above board and careful. So karma in business. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. When we make mistakes in business, it's a lot less painful, and you can recover from it much easier if you have always tried to do the right thing up front. So Scrapping Irish says, well, it looks like I'm removing all the bricks again. Doggy Bones, know where commodities are being extracted from and the energy prices. Is it worth more at the time to recycle or extract? This is a really good point, Doggy Bones. It's if we're mining new materials versus recycling, and sometimes you can't use the recycled materials because they are they have other stuff in them that is just too hard to get back to a pure metal again. So sometimes some industries are forced to use virgin material, but recycling is going to be a very important part of the future. So it's definitely worth it. And Roger, see you scrapping, my integrity is worth way more than any monetary gain. I agree 100%, sir. 100%. All righty. Well, that's enough on the business note for the day. And Karma, let's get on to some stock market discussions. We've got some really interesting businesses in this week's edition of the Value Line Investment Survey. So this is where I get all the information that I share with you. It is a they do not take any advertising. So all they do is give you straight data and analysis of the data. Because they don't take any advertising, they're not beholden to anybody to say the right things. What they are beholden to is people like me that pay the prices for the subscriptions to these to give me good, accurate information. So Value Line Investment Survey. This week, the industries that were reviewed were the thrift industry, the real estate investment trusts, REITs, life insurance, precious metals. Oh, we love that one. Metals and mining, yes. The chemical industry and the drug industry and human resources industry. And no e-waste, Mike, not that drug industry, the legal drugs. So after I went through and looked at this, I found two companies. Hey, Corey J. Let's see, Corey J is talking about lithium mine. They even opened a huge lithium recycling warehouse. Oh, cool. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so I found two companies that are really interesting for us and actually satisfy my requirements for consideration. So we're going to dive right in with the first one, Royal Gold. So as you can tell by the name, Royal Gold is into the gold business. It acquires and manages precious metal royalties and metal streams. So what that means is that they don't actually mine the gold. They invest in the companies that are mining the materials. And they do that either by getting a royalty from the gold that's coming out or a portion of the stream that's coming out. So it's a way for the mining companies to get quote unquote investors without selling stock in that sense. So Royal Gold will negotiate these relationships with other miners, and they give the miners a bunch of money, and then in return, Royal Gold then gets either a percentage of the stream or some royalty from the gold and the silver and other precious metals that are extracted. So they focus on financing projects that are in the production or in development stage in exchange for the royalty interests. The company owed stream interest in 9 producing properties and 2 development properties, and they own royalty interest in 32 other producing properties, 18 development stages, and 123 exploration stages. So, you got to admit, this would be a pretty fascinating place to work, wouldn't it? Can you imagine being one of those folks at Royal Gold and you're talking to miners and they're talking about, oh, we think we found this new great, big load of stuff. And, do you want to pay into it? It'd just be a fascinating place to work. So anyway, what we can see about Royal Gold here is that they are not qualified in the cash flow. Oops, here we go. they're not qualified by cash flow or earnings per share because they had so many hits, but they are qualified for the dividends. They're a div zero, so that means they've had 17 years of increasing dividends per share. Now, their yield is not really great. I mean, 1.3%, and it's on $117. That's your buy-in, is 117 and some change, right? So you can get better interest and at a lower cost in a lot of other industries and a lot of other companies. But if you're really interested in having some play in the precious metal market other than actually owning physical gold and silver, Royal Gold is a potential player. And here we can look at, if we graphically, the gold line here is the dividends per share, and you can see that that was a steady upward trend. And their overall, their earnings and cash flow per share have also increased. So they're not a bad company to invest in. They're just not, you're not going to get the big dividends that you might get with some other companies. And you have to realize that, their earnings and their cash flow are going to swing with the commodities market of metals. So you've got to consider that with these folks. And you can see that even more clearly if we look at the year-to-year changes. So you can see all the ups and downs of the cash flow and the earnings. But the good news is that the gold bars, which are the dividends, have always been on the positive side of the zero line. So that is a consideration if you are interested in adding a precious metal player to your portfolio. You might want to think about Royal Gold. Now, the other player that I found that is that's in the metals and mining, and they are a specific mining company, but they're not in precious metals. So the other company that I found really interesting to take a look at is Kaiser Aluminum. Now, Kaiser Aluminum is an interesting play because we can see, first of all, that the dividends are something that gets our attention at 4.3%. So not a bad dividend. And the share price is not bad at $71.22 a share. So we could say to ourselves, that's not a bad investment. There's some reasonableness to this. But if we look at the qualifications, we start to get a little bit nervous. We see that cash flow per share, they're not qualified. They've had 7 down marks. Earnings per share, they're not qualified. They've had 8 down marks. And dividends per share, they're technically not qualified because they had 2 flat years, and we would normally only allow 1 flat year. However, if we take a look with a little more detail, what we see is that the second down year is out here in 2024. That's a forecast. So what that means is that the analysts at Value Line Investment Survey are predicting that Kaiser Aluminum is not going to increase their dividend payout in 2024. However, Kaiser Aluminum has a history of increasing their payouts. And you can see that if we go down here and we look at the graphical representation, you can see that even though their cash flow and their earnings have been all over the place, I mean, that's a lot of ups and downs going on there. Overall, their dividend payout has had a reasonably solid growth. The numbers are, good at 4-ish%, and they've never gone down, but they have stayed flat. And if let's go back up here now. If in 2024 they do in fact raise that dividend payout, then they would be qualified as what's called a Div 1. So they would have had just this one flat year here. So I would suggest that if you're thinking about adding a minor or a precious metal type company to your portfolio, Kaiser Aluminum is a good place to look. So let's look. There's a couple other things about Kaiser Aluminum that I want to share with you. They produce semi-fabricated specialty aluminum products, as the name would imply, right? They offer rolled, extruded, drawn aluminum used principally for aerospace, defense, automotive, consumer durables, electronics, electrical, and machinery and equipment applications. They have 13 manufacturing facilities, 1 in Canada, 12 in the United States. And there's a number of things that they talk about, how Kaiser has been getting some of their financials back in order. They acquired a aluminum producer to get them into the food aluminum packaging type aluminum products, and they've had to work that one pretty hard to get the supply chain stabilized and the pricing stabilized, and they're getting that figured out. So the bottom line is that these shares are risky. The stock is best suited for traders who can take advantage of the rapid movements in the price of the aluminum, or patient investors who can stomach near-term share price volatility. So it's actually one of these rare companies that there's two kind of investors that would find it interesting. Someone like myself, who is a dividend investor, would be the investor that would take an interest in Kaiser. I would buy, I would hold, and I would have to stomach all those ups and downs that the analysts are talking about. The other kind of investor is a trader, not an investor, and that's the kind of person who looks to buy when they're low and then sell them when they're high. So they're a trader, a stock trader, not a stock investor. And it's unusual for a company to be able to satisfy both these kind of interests in a stock purchase. So Kaiser Aluminum might be worth looking into for y'all. All right, so two very interesting companies in the metal market, in the precious metals and the mining industries. And of course, there's a number of other names there that if you've been paying attention at all, you recognize some of these names: Barrick, Franco-Nevada, Pan American Silver, Rio Tinto, Alcoa. And, if you're interested in any of these, let me know. I'll be happy to share with you what information I can on those companies. Offline, shoot me an email. And of course, if you're one of my patrons on Patreon and you want me to do a more in-depth analysis, I'll be happy to do that for you. So that was the metals and mining industry stocks that we looked at. Some really cool stuff. Now, I had a request from one of my viewers during the week, and I don't know if they want me to share their name, so I'm not going to share their name, but they asked me about Cummins. So I went in and took a look at Cummins now, because and I actually found that this was a kind of an interesting stock to take a look at. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Cummins, they design, manufacture, distribute, and service diesel, natural gas, electric, hybrid powertrains and powertrain-related components, including control and fuel systems, automated transmissions, batteries, electric power systems, hydrogen production, and fuel cell systems. I mean, man, they're all there. If it has anything to do with energy and power, it looks like Cummins is involved in it, which makes them an interesting company to consider here moving forward. From the perspective of what I look at when I'm looking at these companies, what we can see is that the dividend isn't great, but it's also not terrible at 2.8 2.7%. That's a, I mean, it's not bad, right? Not bad. And that's 2.7% on 234 and some change. So it's kind of an expensive stock to get into, but it probably doesn't surprise you. I think a lot of you probably know the name, and the fact that they're in the 200s probably doesn't surprise you. And when you think about what they're involved in, that also, kind of stands to reason there, right? So are they qualified in our methodology? Well, you can see here that, for their cash flow per share and their earnings per share, they are not qualified. They've had 5 and 6 down years in there respectively, but dividends per share, look, they're qualified as a div 0. So 17 years of increasing dividends per share, going strong and forecasted to continue. So, that speaks well of them. If we look at graphically, it's like, wow, look at that. The lines are all going in the direction that you want the lines to go in when you're investing in somebody. Cash flow per share and earnings per share going up, even though they've got some ups and downs. And more importantly, from my perspective, the dividends per share, a nice strong growth rate throughout the entire period. If we look at the year-to-year changes in this company, we do see some volatility here, but for the most part, all of the year-to-year changes are on the positive side. And then the gold bars, which are the dividends, of course, are all on the positive side. So, excuse me, let me get a swig of coffee here. So, this is definitely a good company to take a look at if you're thinking about investing in a company that is going to have some future and some legs in the green industry moving forward. Now, and what's interesting about Cummins, so they're covered in what's called the heavy truck and equipment makers industry, and they're all in the powertrains, right? So whether it's the big trucks that are in the mines, the big trucks that are needed to move stuff around, whether it's the new green stuff, they're involved in all of those areas. So they have a good broad role in this industry. I would like them to be paying a little bit more interest, but given how expensive the share price is, that's not that bad. So something for you to consider. Now, I do need to make sure that everybody understands that I am not a qualified financial counselor. This is just what I do when I analyze stocks for my own consideration, and I share that with you. If you are going to invest in the stock market, I do encourage you to do your own due diligence and weigh your risks and returns, because even the best companies out there can screw it up sometimes. All right, so you want to really be careful with the investments you make. I believe that my analysis of requiring that a company has at least one of the following: increasing cash flow per share, increasing earnings per share, increasing dividends per share for the last 17 years, and primarily the dividends, because I'm a dividend investor. I believe that if a company can hit at least one of those 3 goals, then they're showing me that they've got a good long-term track record and they're worth giving a consideration for investing. Well, everybody, I hope you have enjoyed our discussion today, and I really appreciated the question on Cummins. I think it's certainly something to take a look at. I had a wonderful day today chatting with you all. It was a lot of fun looking at these industries, looking at what's going on with gold and copper. If y'all want me to, I'll do silver next week. We had a question about silver. So unless you all tell me otherwise, I'll plan to do silver next week. Here, I'm going to write it down right now. Do silver next week. All right, remember, if you have autoplay enabled, then what's going to happen is as soon as I shut the stream down, It's going to take you over to Scrapping Irish's live stream, where we can continue to share and talk about what's going on. If you do not have autoplay enabled, then please go to your YouTube channel, look for Scrapping Irish, and join us on the live stream. However, if you're busy celebrating the 4th of July or Canada Day, I don't know if you guys celebrate Canada Day throughout the weekend or not. If you're busy celebrating any of those holidays, I certainly understand it if we don't see you over there. Go have some barbecue, light some fireworks. And as I saw on one YouTube video this week, the goal is to get to Monday with all of the digits still attached. Take care, everybody. We'll see you over on Scrapping Irish's live stream.